now is Kansas Senator Roger Marshall, a member of the Senate Budget and Finance Committees. Senator, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Good morning, Maria. Great to be with you, and I'm excited to help fill one more of President Trump's campaign promises that no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on your Social Security. Widely popular. If we don't get this Trump tax cuts permanent across the finish line, it'll mean $1,000 a month in more taxes for hardworking Kansans.
So how will you go about this then, Senator? I know you're aiming to make these cuts permanent. You wanted to do it in a couple of bills. The House has one bill. What can you get done in this next 2-week period before the recess?
I think that we can give President Trump one big, beautiful bill, make our budget line up closer with what the House did. And the emphasis to us, the changes we want to make, as you already stated, we want these Trump tax cuts to be permanent. You talk about running a business or running a family. It's nice to know, what the next 20 years look like, not the next 6 or 8 years. And then we can also make sure that we find enough savings that we can pay for those other Trump tax cuts. The cuts, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security.
So Axios is reporting that the president would also consider allowing the highest earners taxes to actually go up to pay for those no tax on tips, et cetera. Is that in the cards?
I think that's something that's very worthwhile discussing. It's certainly okay with me. I think the president has proven that he is the president for hardworking Americans, and that's where the emphasis is. And that's why, again, he's emphasizing this no tax on Social Security. Want to make sure that those have worked so hard, paying into this system for decades, get the most benefit from those earnings.
But look, the president campaigned on lower taxes for everyone. Are you saying that you are okay with the president raising taxes on the highest earners?
Look, I hope we don't have to do that, but I think if I have to make the choice, it's something we have to consider. Look, there are multiple opportunities where we can make savings. Already, the Senate wants to cut back $2 trillion over the next 10 years. The House is at $1.5 trillion. We got to figure out where that money's coming from. I think there's other alternatives as well, but I think everything's on the table right now.
Okay, well, I spoke with your colleague, Ron Johnson, yesterday, and he said the House budget will not pass the Senate because he is insisting that spending get back to pre-COVID levels. Here's Senator Johnson with me yesterday. What?
In 2019, prior to the pandemic, we spent $4.4 trillion. This year, we will spend about $7.3 trillion. That's a 63% increase, while our population has grown 2.6%. Nobody can justify that explosion in spending, and yet there is simply no process for controlling spending or returning to a pre-pandemic level. Unfortunately, the House budget resolution at most would save $200 billion a year. That takes us from 7.3 to 7.1. I don't think people voted for Republicans expecting to pretty well retain President Biden's spending level. So we have to get serious about returning to a pre-pandemic level. It shouldn't be that hard.
Your thoughts, Senator?
Well, the most important numbers that Ron didn't talk about is 218 and 50. Yeah. It takes 218 votes in the House, 50 in the Senate, and there's going to be a compromise. We have people in the House and the Senate squealing over just a $1.5 trillion cut over 10 years already. So I think there's something in the middle. This is why we need a second and third bite at the apple. We can do a second and third reconciliation bill. We can bring rescissions back in. So I agree with Ron that our goal should be get to a balanced budget. Do I think we can do it in 1 year? I wish we could. I think it'll be a 4-year project. That's my personal goal, is get to a balanced budget in 4 years. And I think with President Trump's leadership, we can do that.
Well, certainly all this cutting that DOGE is doing is helpful, but that's not going to get you to a balanced budget. Elon Musk is set to visit the CIA today to discuss government efficiency with Director John Ratcliffe. Musk and DOGE team member, private equity executive Antonio Gracie is explaining their work on Social Security fraud at a Wisconsin town hall yesterday. Watch this.
We started at the top of the system, mapping the whole system of Social Security to understand where all the fraud was. In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
40% of the calls into Social Security were fraudulent, like meaning that it was someone trying to get a Social Security payment that was going to a senior instead to go to a fraud ring. DOGE will make sure you get your Social Security DOGE will make sure you get your Medicaid. There will be no cuts to legitimate payments whatsoever.
Incredible, Senator. I mean, you know, hearing that interview with Brett Baer the other day from the DOGE group and Elon Musk was just astounding, some of the things that they found. We don't know if all of those people on the Social Security rolls that are 120 years old, we don't know if they've actually accepted those benefits, right? But we know that they're on the roll, so there's a chance that they've been collecting benefits. Somebody has been, because we know they're not 120 years old, but somebody is collecting them.
Right, Maria. So I came to Congress to save Social Security. President Trump wants to save Social Security. We want those monies to go to those people that, again, have been paying into the program for decades. What we do know is that 40% of those phone calls coming into the Social Security hotline are people trying to change the account where that money is being sent to. I don't know the success level of those. I'm not sure the percentage of out of country, but what we do know from past experience, if you go back to the unemployment crisis that we had during the pandemic, that lots of those monies were sent out of the country as well. So we're going to work on that. I think that's a huge priority.
Well, unbelievable. I mean, you're a founding member of the Senate DOGE caucus. What else can you do in that role in terms of really cutting into this waste, fraud, and abuse?
You know, I think every week we identify something new at our level, and I try to pass that on to the DOGE team as well. And so far, the first one I gave them was a USAID. It was number 4 on my list of 15 things I gave to the DOGE on that in the first meeting with them. We're continuing to point out where those opportunities are.
So you're a doctor. I mean, the Department of Health and Human Services announced it's going to cut 10,000 workers and close 5 regional offices. Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is promising that they'll be able to do more with less, Senator. I know you met with the secretary last week. What can you tell us?
Well, look, let's think about HHS, the big picture. It did have 80,000 employees. Joe Biden added 10,000 more to it. So we went from 80,000 to 90,000 employees. There's 28 agencies in NIH, and what Secretary Kennedy is doing is condensing that to 15. So we'll go to 28 to 15 as well. There's 700 different IT programs in NIH alone. So there's a whole lot of work to be done to make us more efficient there.
All right. We will be watching your work, Senator. Important work. Thank you so much for being here.